time about how I caught my mom hooking up with my guy best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. I'm sending me on Instagram. My best friend and I have known each other for 7 years. Let's call him Mark. Mark and I met when we were in school, and we have been inseparable since then. Everyone's constantly telling us that we should date, but we're not into each other like that. Last year, my parents started fighting a lot because my dad found out that my mom cheated on him. And she cheated on him with my dad's best friend. My mom's the kind of woman that constantly seeks attention from men. And growing up, she weirdly competed with me. Like anytime I liked a boy, she would flirt with him in front of me. So yeah, my mom's not the best when it comes to stuff like that. So when my dad found out that my mom was cheating on him, I basically just wanted to keep the peace. And I convinced my dad to not get a divorce. Huge mistake. Fast forward to 2 months ago. Mark was just about to turn 20, so I had been planning a birthday party for him. Because of COVID, I was only inviting our immediate family and close friends. And of course, my mom had to interject and wanted to help me plan everything. I told her several times I didn't need her help, but she insisted. Let me just say this, before any of this happened, it never occurred to me that my mom was even attracted to Mark. I saw him as like a brother to me, so I assumed that she would see him the same way. My mom and dad kept arguing every single day. Mark would come over and he would just let me vent to him. The day of Mark's birthday party is when I started noticing some weird things. My mom, of course, had to drink a lot of champagne, so she was getting a little tipsy. She insisted on dancing with Mark and like making this big scene, so they started dancing. More people joined the dance floor and it became like a real party. A few hours later, I see my mom and Mark sitting on the couch, but my mom is crying her eyeballs out, complaining about my dad, and Mark is just there listening to her. I mean, she's putting him in a weird position. I literally had to peel my mom off of Mark and take her home and put her into bed. Thankfully, Mark just thought it was funny, so he didn't get upset. A few weeks later, I come home and find Mark in the kitchen with my mom. Once again, my mom is drinking and complaining about my dad. And once again, Mark is just listening to her. But here's the thing. My mom was standing there in a bikini, supposedly ready to get in the pool, part 2. So my mom is standing there in a bikini trying to seduce my guy best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. Send me on Instagram. I asked my mom nicely to go put on some clothes and she refused. So I grabbed Mark's hand and told him to come upstairs with me. I asked him what was going on between him and my mom and he said nothing. And he even said that I was ridiculous for even suggesting something like that. And I believed him, so I let it go. A few days later, my mom is dressed up all sexy in a red tight dress, supposedly making breakfast for my dad and I. But my dad had already left for work, and I was going to school, so she knew that. I had the feeling that she had Mark coming over and she didn't want me to know. So I got in my car and told her I was leaving for school. Instead, I waited around the corner and I saw Mark driving up to the house. I waited for about 10 minutes and then I quietly pulled into the driveway and opened the door. And what do you know? My mom is sitting on the countertop making out with my guy best friend. And they were going at it. Like if I hadn't gotten there, it would have happened, you know? I slammed the door and my mom jumps off the counter. Mark pretends that nothing's wrong and tells me that he has to go to school. But of course, I didn't let him leave. That's when my mom told me that they were in love. And what do you know? Mark confirmed it. That's when my mom basically begged me not to tell my dad anything and that her and Mark were going to continue seeing each other. I told my mom I'd keep the secret, but instead, I drove straight to my dad's job and told him everything. He went straight to his lawyer and filed for divorce. When he confronted her, my mom basically said that I was lying and that I had for some reason made everything up. Mark, on the other hand, is totally in love with her, but she's telling him to leave her alone. So she also broke his heart. He doesn't even want to go back to school and he's begging me to get my mom and him back together. I told him that that would never happen because my mom is never going to leave my dad. My dad makes a lot of money and she has no job. He provides her a lifestyle that Mark could never. Now here's the thing, my mom's accusing me of being a terrible daughter for telling my dad, but how could I not tell my dad? I mean, am I the asshole here? I doubt it, but what do you guys think? What should I do?
So Jackie decided to go to beauty school. As soon as she entered her classroom, she looked at her male teacher and was instantly attracted to him. She's like, whoa, my teacher is a hottie. He looks up at her and he goes, hello, let's keep it professional here now, Miss Lady. I'm Mr. Peterson. What's your name? She goes, Jackie. Okay, I'll try. But one question, are you married? He goes, yes, to the director of this school. Now, keep it professional. We don't want to start bad here, do we now? She's like, okay. But as time went by, she developed the biggest crush on him and then kind of obsessed. She ended up looking him and his wife up on Facebook. She would constantly stalk the director's social media to see what they were up to and slowly began to envy her. During break time, she would stay behind and ask the teacher to guide her a little bit more just so she could have some alone time with him. One of her classmates noticed that she had a crush on him and she was like, girl, I don't recommend you try to get with him. 1, he's your teacher. 2, your license is bigger than this crap here. And 3, the director is his wife, so back off. Jackie's like, I don't know what you're talking about, girl. He's cute. Like, what do you want me to do? Her obsession grew for him, though. Eventually, she decided to try to figure out where he lived. And she did. She figured out that he lived right next to a Trader Joe's in an apartment complex. She went over there 3 separate times until finally she sees him entering the store this one lovely day. She quickly rushed inside and goes, Mr. Peterson? He turns around shockingly. Jackie? She's like, hi, oh my God, how are you? What are you doing here? He's like, shopping? What are you doing here? Oh, just shopping too. He's like, okay, well, nice to see you, and walks away. This infuriated her because she thought he was going to give her a different reaction since they were no longer in school. So she comes up with a plan. She notices that he's checking out pretty quickly. So she grabs 3 items and asks him if she can cut him because she's in a rush. He's like, yeah, go ahead. She's like, thank you so much. But as soon as she walks out, she purposely spills her hot chocolate on herself. When he walks out, he's like, oh my goodness, Jackie, are you okay? She's like, no, oh my God, I have somewhere to be at. Is it too much to ask if I can use your washing machine or your restroom, please? He's like, I don't know about this, Jackie. It's not appropriate at all. He's very reluctant, but he agrees to take her upstairs. He had a small washing and drying machine inside of his apartment. So they go inside and she begs him to allow her to shower really fast to get all that hot chocolate off of her skin. He's like, yeah, go ahead. I'll give you a t-shirt and some shorts. Hopefully everything will be washed in like 20 minutes. But we have to hurry because my wife, Michelle, should be home in about 2 hours. Michelle was so happy about this. She goes in the bathroom and she goes through all of the wife's belongings. She used her body wash, her shampoo, conditioner, lotion, and perfume. When she's done showering, she steps out naked. She walks to the living room where he's sitting and he's shocked. Whoa, Jackie, the clothing is back there. Go put it on. She's like, Mr. Peterson, I just want to say thank you very much for allowing me to come here and use your washing machine. And I want to show you my gratitude. He has his eyes closed and he's like, yeah, sure. Just please go get dressed, Jackie, please. She approaches him, sits next to him. He gets up immediately and yells at her. He's like, Jackie, stop. Get dressed and leave my apartment immediately. She then starts crying. He doesn't know what to do. He's walking back and forth, grabs the clothing, throws it at her, but eventually she ends up seducing him. They do things that only a husband and wife should be doing. When they're done, he's extremely regretful. He can't believe that he fell into temptation. Jackie grabs her clothing from the dryer, puts it on, says, bye, Mr. Peterson. I'll see you in school, right? He looks at her and says, Jackie, I'm a married man. I'm a teacher. I can lose everything. Please don't ever say anything. Jackie purposely left her underwear and her bra inside of the dryer. The wife gets home and nothing really happened. A few days later, they see each other in school again. He just doesn't know how to act around her. She's extremely flirtatious. When no one is around, she tries to hug on him, kiss him. He is just at the point where he's going to explode. He whispers in her ear and says, Jackie, stop. I'm serious. This cannot happen. It was a one-time thing. It was a mistake. She's like, me? A mistake? No, this is not a mistake. At this point, he's contemplating, thinking to himself, should I tell my wife? Shoot, I don't know what to do. Jackie threatens him, though. She says, if you don't continue with this, I will tell everyone and you will lose it all. So they continue the affair for about a week or so. The day comes that the wife has to do some laundry. She throws in the stuff in the washer, then in the dryer. When she takes out the belongings, she discovers the bra and undies. When Michelle discovered the undergarments in her dryer, she didn't think too much about it. Mr. Peterson saw the undergarments and froze. He quickly tried to distract Michelle, and it worked. A few other times, Jackie tried to leave clues in his vehicle, like leaving lipstick, mascaras, but each and every time that Michelle would discover these items, she would brush them off, thinking it was probably his sister's or something she left behind. Jackie grew frustrated because she wanted Mr. Peterson to herself, so she started to become more aggressive with him, but he made it very clear that he was not leaving his wife for her ever. At this point, Mr. Peterson is acting very odd in his marriage. Obviously, right? He's hiding something. Michelle, the director, starts to notice he's acting a bit different. One day she's sitting in her office. It's lunchtime for the girls. She figures she should go and talk to him. So she goes into his classroom and discovers Jackie and her husband hugging. She gently knocks on the wall near the door. Excuse me? Am I interrupting anything? She asked. Jackie smirked, but Mr. Peterson wasn't happy that he got caught. He's like, hey, babe, I was just consoling Jackie. She's going through a lot right now. Michelle's like, this is not appropriate at all. You and I will have a conversation later. This is when Jackie tells her everything. She's like, Michelle, Mrs. Peterson, whatever you want me to call you, I've been messing with your husband. Michelle was shocked. She told Jackie to leave. Jackie's like, I'm not leaving. I paid it to be here. You have to keep your professionalism. Michelle was distraught. She didn't know how to handle this situation because Jackie was a student in her school. She ended up suspending her husband. Jackie ended up finishing a program. But unfortunately, Michelle did forgive her husband for this one.
Am I wrong for making all the women in my family leave my wedding after they showed up wearing white? I, 33 male, have a large family, mostly aunts and female cousins aside from the mom, stepmom, stepsister, and grandmother. I don't know how to say this, but all those women I mentioned above are into teasing and joking. They formed a unit which I admit is kind of toxic, and they tease and roast every new woman that enters the family by marriage by setting up tests to see if they deserve to be part of the family, or roast their looks and styles to the point of breaking confidence and self-esteem down. Then, after a few months of teasing, they announced that they finally welcomed them into the family. The newest member would join in on the teasing too. When I first introduced my then girlfriend, now wife, I made it clear that I didn't want any of the women in the unit to come at her or harass her, not even with a single word. They went behind my back and roasted her looks and job, and I discovered they've been doing it on Facebook. I made them apologize one by one after they gave the "we're just testing the water to see if she's capable to be part of the family" excuse. They didn't want to apologize, but once I said I wouldn't invite any of the unit unless they apologized, including my mom, everyone immediately apologized and brought gifts for my wife. My wedding was 2 weeks ago. There was talk about the woman in the family wanting to pull a prank on my wife by wearing white and called it the ultimate test to see how my wife would react. My brother warned me, so I announced that if any one of them showed up in white, I'd have them kicked out, including my mom. They said this wasn't true and they'd never do such a thing. But they showed up to my wedding day one by one wearing white dresses, and each and every one of them was told to leave after they tried giving excuses by either making scenes or getting the men involved. The senior women of the unit, who are my mom and aunts, also showed up in white but refused to leave. I threatened to take harsher action, and my mom was pissed, telling me to step aside, but I didn't let her in. I had her leave while the men in my family were watching stunned. Dad was on my side and supported me a lot. My wife was hurt beyond measure, but the women in the family were pissed. My cousin blasted me on social media later, saying I excluded all the women from the wedding because my wife was so insecure she couldn't handle another woman's presence at her wedding. I felt absolutely awful because my wedding was being interrupted by them making scenes. I had an argument with them, and my mom berated me, saying it was supposed to be a prank, but I said they were taking it too far. My mom said I took it too far by kicking them out because they were trying to get a reaction from my wife to see if she was one of those bridezillas and were going to change as soon as the prank was over. But I ruined my own wedding, an entire wedding, by reacting so aggressively. I stopped talking after she said I had to bring my wife and apologize. I haven't seen the lot of them in 2 weeks, and they've excluded me from everything. So, was I wrong for how I handled the situation? Absolutely. Oh my god, look at this. Absolutely not. Your wife is one lucky woman to have a man stand by her like that. Like, applause to you. Good job.
Storytime about when I accidentally almost killed a one-night stand. I got out of a bad relationship a few months ago, and I only recently felt good enough to get out of the house again. This was my first ever boyfriend, and he turned out to be a piece of crap, so I was obviously a bit hesitant. However, some old friends from high school were visiting my town and asked if I wanted to go on a bar crawl with them. I figured, screw it, it's not like anything will happen other than getting drunk with some pals, so why not? At the first bar, we ran into a group of guys from my university. I had seen some of them around but never spoke to them before. One of my friends decided she's going to force me to get out of my shell and drags our group over to talk to them. I'm extremely quiet, like really quiet to most people, so I end up sitting in the corner of our booth and not saying anything, just drinking and feeling awkward, while one of the guys in the other group, Adam, is also being really quiet. My friends and his friends, who are already tipsy, decide to make things as awkward as possible by making us play truth or dare, except we have to drink when we don't want to answer something. There were a lot of personal and sexual questions neither of us want to answer, so we end up drinking quite a bit. By the time we're done at the first bar, Adam and I are on a whole different plane of existence from everyone else. It turned out that we had a lot in common. He was pretty cute, and we're goofing around and laughing the whole time. I started getting butterflies in my stomach, and it wasn't just from the alcohol. Adam had my exact sense of humor and is really sweet and kind. We wander off and start having deep, drunk conversations about feeling left out of things and how annoying it is when people say shit like, "Can they speak?" I tell him I'm walking home and he offers to walk with me. I know where this is going, but I'm drunk enough that I don't feel nervous, plus I feel like I have a genuine connection with this guy. Our friends are wolf whistling as we leave, and instead of being embarrassed, I feel weirdly proud. So we get to my place, talk and smoke for a bit, and do the deed. I wake up earlier than him and decide that I'm going to make a nice breakfast. I want to impress him and show him that I like him, and everyone likes a good breakfast when they have a hangover, right? I sneak out of bed and make scrambled eggs, French toast, and sausage. I prefer almond milk, so I use that for the eggs and the French toast. He wakes up and tells me I look just as cute sober. At this point, I'm convinced he's the love of my life. He sees the breakfast and gets excited, and I'm like, yes, my plan worked. I'm going to get to his heart through his stomach. We eat, and everything's going great for a few bites. Then he makes a weird face and clears his throat. His eyes start to widen and he asks me if there were any nuts in the bread or something. I say no, but I use almond milk. He jumps out of his chair and says, "Call an ambulance right now." I'm freaking the fuck out. He's wheezing and stuff and looks absolutely panicked. I ask if he has an EpiPen and he shakes his head no. So I call an ambulance and tell them that he's having an allergic reaction and the paramedics come to haul him off. I haven't heard back from him since. I found his buddy and confirmed that he's not dead. I guess accidentally triggering a severe allergic reaction does not lead to romance.
Okay, I know I haven't been single in a while, and I've had my fair share of fucking nut jobs, but are they getting weirder? Because every story I hear from my friends are diabolical. So on Monday, my girlfriend and I are at a party, and she's like, I might meet up with a guy from Hinge after. So I guess she texts him her address, and then she ends up getting wasted, and she stays at the party till like 3 in the morning. When she gets home, she gets into her house and gets a text from the guy being like, hey, I just saw you walk in your house, I'm outside. So now she's like, did I tell him to come over? Like, why is he outside my house? What happened? So I guess since she didn't understand what happened, she lets him in. And when he gets inside, he goes, hey, do you mind if I take a shower? I'm just freezing because I've been waiting outside for you for 2 hours. Now she's like, sure. So he goes and takes a shower to warm the bones. She's obviously like, oh shit. Anyway, he comes out of the shower, goes into her room, and then comes into the living room wearing all her clothes. Like TNA sweatpants she just bought. Like, ladies, come on, we know how important. Raptors championship shirt. And he's just like, yeah, sorry, my clothes were dirty or wet, or I don't know what the fuck the problem with is, but he was crazy. Meanwhile, she's telling me the story and she goes, and Sam, the guy's a hockey player. So like, you know, he used to play for the St. Louis Blues. So my TNA pants were capris on him. And I go, stop right there. I happen to know someone that might know this guy. So I message my friend who's dating the goalie of the Blues. And I'm like, do you know this guy? He's wearing all my friend's clothes, blah, blah, blah. She's a sleuth over in St. Louis. She's like, not only do I not know him, but according to my research, he was never even on the team. And I'm like, oh, so he's a hockey player. That lies. I've never heard of such a thing. Anyway, my friend doesn't know what to do, so she just goes to bed. So he gets in bed next to her and he's like, do you want to fuck? And she's like, no. So then he goes, okay, I'm just gonna go. Do you mind if I wear these clothes? And she's like, kind of, yeah, like what's wrong with your clothes? And he's like, well, they're freezing cold or wet or something from when I waited for you outside for 2 hours. She just had to let those sweats go. She had to let that Raptor shirt go. And you know what? It's not the worst it could have gone. You know, you kind of let a stranger into your house unbeknownst to you. If he took your clothes, you know, whatever. It is a jungle out there though, I swear to God. You guys got any weird ones? Drop a comment.
Am I the asshole for telling my sister she would have been a terrible mother? I, 17 male, have 2 sisters, Alice, 29, and Miranda, 33. I am much closer to Alice than I am Miranda. Miranda is also not on good terms with our parents. Alice has 4 kids and is currently expecting child number 5, while Miranda can't have children, which her ex divorced her for. Miranda is very successful in life. She has a nice apartment, works a good job, and earns a decent amount of money. Alice, on the other hand, is struggling financially. She had her first kid right out of high school and got pregnant with her second soon after, so she decided to become a stay-at-home mom to her children while her boyfriend provides for them. Me and my parents try to help them as much as possible, be it childcare or money, whatever she needs. I love my nieces and nephew. I take them to the park and play with the older ones. I really enjoy it. Miranda doesn't help them out. She says she's too busy. Well, she works long hours, but she doesn't have kids, so I don't know what she does on the weekends. She also doesn't help financially, which I find unfair, since she has so much money and all she does is spend it on herself. Although she does give us very nice gifts for Christmas and birthdays. My parents nag her about it, saying that she should give some of her money to Alice monthly, and I agree with that. So here comes the part where I may have been an asshole. I was at Miranda's place last week as she baked muffins and invited me over to eat some and catch up. We got on the topic of Christmas presents and I told her some of the stuff that I wanted. She nodded and said she would give our parents a coupon for a much-needed vacation and Alice some clothes that she had mentioned, and also some new boots and jackets for her kids. I was a little stunned she didn't have more for Alice, so I asked, why do you only give Alice the bare minimum? You can afford to help out more and you refuse to out of spite. Miranda looked at me and laughed. She said it wasn't her business to feed 6 people, that Alice was old enough to make her choices and live with the consequences. She knew what she was getting herself into, and that she wouldn't pay Alice's way through life because she kept having kids that she couldn't afford. I was stunned how cold she reacted. I asked her how she could live her life being so selfish and uncaring, and she got angry with me and told me, listen, kid, there are some things you are way too young to be discussing with me, and this is one of those. Drop the subject or get out. I got really frustrated with her and said something that I probably shouldn't have. I told her, no wonder your husband divorced you. Even if you could have children, you would be a terrible mother. Miranda got very quiet and told me to leave and never come back. She has now blocked me on everything, and though I don't agree with her helping out, I'm starting to feel guilty for what I said. Am I the asshole?
Storytime on why my dad would never allow me and my sister inside of his basement. So, growing up, my parents split, and my sister and I would stay with my mom. During the summer, we'd go see our father. My dad was a mortician, and he owned a funeral home. When he would do his work, he'd go to his basement and tell us to never go inside of it. At night, he liked his basement. I always assumed that he didn't want us going down there in fear of us seeing dead bodies. One night, me and my sister was up. We couldn't sleep, so we started playing Truth or Dare. And my little sister dared me to go inside the basement. I didn't want to be a punk, so I did the dare, and I found the key to go to the basement. Before I get down there, I, of course, expected to see bodies. But when I was walking around, I didn't see any. But what was crazy was that it sounded like there were little girls crying. If you want to know what I saw, come back for part 2. This is part 2 of why my dad would never allow me and my sister inside of his basement. So, like I said, I went downstairs to the basement, and I didn't see any bodies. Instead, I heard whimpering and crying. So, I went back upstairs and told my sister that there was nothing down there. She said that she wanted to see, so she came to the basement with me. When we were both walking around, she said that she heard the whimpering too. My sister had saw a door, and it sounded like the noise was coming from behind the door. When we opened it, we saw girls chained up. Storytime on how my own best friend set me up. Trigger warning, sexual assault. So when I was 13, 14 in the 8th grade, I met this girl, which we're going to call Aubrey. Throughout that year, we became really close friends, and we even went to each other's houses just about every day. And at that time, I was a virgin. I was very insecure, and I didn't know my worth. And definitely attracted to the wrong boys. And that's how me and Aubrey related. We bonded over trauma, which can be toxic. But anyways, one day we met these boys. At that time, I didn't know who these boys were. And Aubrey pretended not to know them either, but I had no idea. They had to be like 17, 18, but I actually really don't know because they probably lied about their age anyway. So we started hanging around these boys, which we're going to call Stick and George. And at that time, I really liked George. Throughout our weeks of hanging out, they asked if I ever smoked Mary Jane. And I said no because I've never smoked. Push come to shove, I get peer pressured into doing it. And I think it was late. Come back for part 2. This is part 2 of how my own best friend set me up. Trigger warning, sexual assault. So, like I said earlier, I got peer pressured into smoking Mary Jane, and I think it was laced. Throughout that time of being intoxicated, I didn't know what was really going on. And remember the guy I told you guys about, George? Well, he had his way with me and my friend. Aubrey knew about it, but didn't say anything. I didn't realize the severity of the situation and definitely didn't agree to anything that happened. As time went on, I started to gain my memory back on what was actually going on and started to understand, and I decided to tell my family. But nothing happened. It was almost like the person who did it to me got a slap on the wrist for what he did. When I was younger, there was a girl I knew who lived in our neighborhood. None of the kids liked her because they claimed that she stank and acted weird. When they talked about her, I kind of felt bad, so I became friends with her. Yeah, of course, I got the, why do you hang out with her? But she really wasn't all that bad. But her scent, they were kind of right about that. One day, she invites me over to her house, and she was very excited because she told me I was the first person to ever come over. And I felt so honored, so I went. But when I went into her house, it smelled very bad, almost nauseating, but I didn't say anything because I didn't want to be rude. She had a lot of uncles that lived with her family. Honestly, it was like 4 to 5 families in one house, to be honest. But she first introduced me to her stepmom. I said hi to her, but she just stared at me in disgust. Then we went to her room to play. As it got later, I told her I needed to go home. But she begged me to stay longer because she was scared. I told her I'd come tomorrow, and she just starts crying. She runs into her bed and falls into her sheets. which lifted her skirt. There were bruises all over her thighs. Let me know if y'all want a part 2. Part 2 about the girl I know who lived in my neighborhood. So it's late and it's time for me to go home. She said she was scared and starts crying. Then she runs into her bed and flops into her sheets. Her skirt lifted and there were bruises all around her thighs. I ask her, what happened? She looks down and quickly pulls her skirt over her bruises. I ask, did someone do that to you? And she says she can't tell me. I ask why. She responds, if I do, they're going to hurt me. So I ran downstairs to her stepmom and told her what I saw. She sits and laughs in my face. I was so confused and asked her, are you gonna help her? And she tells me that little hoe can help herself and that I actually should be going home. So I went into the living room where her uncles were and told them. One of them had said, that's why that girl don't need to be bringing random folks into the house, and runs upstairs to her room. One of the other uncles asks, you want to get popped? I shook my head in fear and said no. And he yells at me, telling me to go home. From there, I ran home and never came back. And after that day, she never came back outside. It's been 7 years. To this day, I wonder what happened to her. Story time about how I found out my husband gave me HIV while I was pregnant. So me and my husband were high school sweethearts. He was very kind, very in tune about my feelings, and we were like best friends. We never really did anything sexual because he didn't want our relationship to be like that. We were together for 6 years, waited until marriage to lose our virginity to one another. The year before getting married, I noticed he would stare at guys a lot, but I would never really think anything about it because at least he was not looking at girls. Fast forward, we get married, and 2 years later, I get pregnant, and we were both excited. When I get to the doctors, I get my yearly test done for STDs, of course, but as always, I'm clean. Maybe 1 or 2 weeks later, I get a call from the doctor saying I tested positive for HIV. Let me know if you guys want a part 2. Part 2 of how I found out my husband gave me HIV while I was pregnant. Like I said earlier, 2 weeks later, I get a call from the doctor saying I tested positive for HIV. I was shaking and crying, and I was so in shock. And the only thing I ever heard about HIV at the time was that I only had a couple months to live. I couldn't believe the only man that I've ever been with gave me this disease. I thought I was doing everything right, the right way, and still ended up being in a hole. I was so nervous to confront my husband because I didn't think it was like him to cheat on me, and I thought maybe he thought I was cheating. So the next day I pretended everything was fine. I lied to him and told him that my phone died and that I needed his to call my mother. He gave me his phone. I went into the bathroom and immediately I started snooping. As I'm going through his phone, I didn't see any texts from girls. So I'm like, maybe the doctor got the wrong test. I'm running out of time. Come back for part 3. Part 3 of how I found out my husband gave me HIV while I was pregnant. So, like I said, I went to his phone and I didn't see any texts from other girls. So, I'm thinking maybe the doctor called the wrong person. Anyways, I gave up on looking through his phone and I just talked to him. I sat him down and told him that I had HIV and that I haven't cheated on him ever. He looked at me and cried. He broke down in tears and apologized. I got so upset with him because I realized that he did cheat on me, and I was really upset for our unborn child. So I took all of his clothes, I took his things, and I threw them all out. Right before I kicked him out, I yelled at him saying, "Who was the girl that gave it to you?" And he told me it wasn't a girl. It was his friend David. A story time about the worst date in my entire life. And ladies, this is why you should really know a guy before meeting up with him. By the way, we're calling him Slim Jim. So I met Slim Jim over Instagram. He was cute and he lived in my area. He DM'd me about a date. So a couple weeks later, we went out to dinner. During our date, he seemed pretty cool, but he kept looking down at his phone. I didn't really get upset because he wasn't my boyfriend. When we ordered, the guy literally gets $200 worth of food, and me, on the other hand, I got a $20 solid. But all throughout the date, he kept looking around, and I was so confused. And he constantly said that he needed to go to the bathroom. He told me that he took medicine that made him go to the bathroom a lot. The last time he went to the bathroom, he was gone for like 30 minutes, and at that point, I was irritated and ready to go, until a random girl walks up to me asking if I knew Slim Jim was here. I told her we were on a date, and she basically told me that she was his girlfriend and baby mama. If you want to know what happened after that, let me know down below in the comments. This is part 2 of the worst date in my life. And the reason why, ladies, you need to really know a guy before meeting up with him. So, like I said before, he left me at a table for like 30 minutes, and I got upset because I thought he was trying to ditch me to pay the bill. Well, then a couple minutes later, a girl comes up to me asking if I was on a date with Slim Jim. I told her yes, and she basically explained that she was his girlfriend and baby mom. Well, at this point, she was his ex-girlfriend. She starts telling me the craziest things about him, that he robs people, and that he will soon be doing time for being a part of a murder investigation, and that I should stay away from him because he had HIV and that he gave it to her. I had to ask her, how did you find him? And she tells me that he takes all his new girls here. Then she leaves out the restaurant. 5 minutes later, Slim Jim comes back and tells me he thinks he dropped his wallet. In my head, I'm assuming that he's trying to make me pay for the $200 dinner. So I tell him that I have to go to the bathroom. I'm running out of time.
The way that I was just at 7-Eleven and I'm just trying to check out, do my thing, you know? And this lady, like, she sees me walk in automatically. She's like, so I was like, okay, what's your problem? You know, so I ignore whatever. Now I'm in line and she's behind me. I was like, what the fuck are you huffing and puffing about, bitch? Are you gonna blow a house down? I can't believe that you wear that sweater in public. That is so offensive. Nah, 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 nah. I was like, ma'am, first of all, aren't you 104 years old? Don't tell me about stuff in public when you guys back in the day used to beat each other up until you're unconscious in the courtyard and used to set houses on fire for fun. Don't do it. And I said, ma'am, what is offensive about my sweater? What? There's two deers just having a field day on. They're just humping. I said, no, they're not. You sick old hag. Can you see? Do you need bifocals or something, lady? I see what I see. I'm like, ma'am, look, I did this. I put it in her eyes. I said, can you see it now? Can you? The way that any of this didn't happen, I just made up this whole story.
Those who have been to a ruined wedding, what happened? A co-worker was at one of best friend's wedding. There were very specific rules about the food, no nuts. There were a couple people there, including the maid of honor who were severely allergic. The venue served something that had nuts. Maid of honor went anaphylactic. EpiPen was not effective, and she died on the way to the hospital. Needless to say, there are lawsuits abound. I'm a wedding photographer. I was at one really fancy one a couple of years ago. Typical outdoor deal at a swanky location in the middle of nowhere. The place was really nice. Had a large concrete stairway flanked by water fountains that led down to the altar area, so the bride could be seen by all like she was ascending from heaven. The ceremony begins and the bridal party come down and take their places. Then the bride appears with her father. She takes 3 or 4 steps down the concrete steps and her shoe twists on her. She tumbled down a good 12 feet or more and busted out the majority of her front teeth in the fall. So much blood all over her. With the place being so isolated, it took a good 40 minutes for ambulance to arrive and she was in intense pain. Ultimately she was okay and I got an email from them weeks later with the rescheduled date. This time there was no stairs anywhere in sight.